Canada will not be involved in a military strike against Syria's Assad regime, but it will support a U.S. intervention. That much we knew. But tonight we can tell you about the Canadians who are on the ground, fighting in Syria. Private citizens, and more than just a few. They're battling on the front lines, some as committed extremists. Adrienne Arsenault has been investigating this story and has the exclusive details in our lead story tonight.
There are families here who must just stare at these Syrian jihadi videos and panic, looking for their sons. Because we now know there are dozens, maybe even as many as 100 Canadians fighting in Syria. Some started with rebel groups, many are now with extremists. With a group like this one, a unit of jihadi foreign fighters, including Chechens, Americans, Brits, and a lot of Canadians.
Anybody running in the field?
Among them, Abu Muslim, featured here in a Channel 4 documentary.
Your parents know where you are?
Yeah.
Okay, and are they Muslim?
No.
The man who shot this video, Bilal Abdul Karim, is an American who's lived among the group for a year. Reached in Aleppo province, we asked about how many Canadians he has encountered.
Well, now, that's a bit difficult to say. I would probably say something to the tune of 20 to 30, I would say.
And each one was a convert, he says. That's 20 or 30 Canadians he alone claims to have seen. And remember, there are myriad extremist groups in Syria now. He tells us the Canadian, Abu Muslim, was part of this raid on an airport a few weeks ago.
After numerous attempts, the airport was finally taken by the group Jabhat al-Nusra, and he was a part of that process.
A social media report from a jihadi group claims a Canadian fighter was killed in that attack, but we can't prove it, nor have we been able to track Abu Muslim's family. CBC has anecdotal evidence about at least 3 Canadian deaths, but the Department of Foreign Affairs has not answered our requests for official numbers. This jihadi tracker says if you step back, you'll see a number of Canadian fighters that is high enough to alarm and perplex, considering the reported American numbers are much smaller. Canada may just be overrepresented amongst the jihadi fighters.
When you look at it in context, it is certainly disproportionate. The community from which foreign fighters tend to originate is also much smaller in Canada. There are just fewer Muslims.
He also insists there's no historical precedent for Canadians fighting overseas in these ratios. So why now? How is this happening? Questions this young man's mother has been asking for months.
So what am I supposed to do now? Get on a plane and hike across the border by myself in a desert?
A troubled teen who converted, then was radicalized. He bolted from Canada for a Syrian extremist group in November. CISA's agents said they'd been tracking him and a pattern.
They were leaving 2 or 3 at a time on a weekly basis.
On a weekly basis?
On a weekly basis.
How many weeks did they say that pattern had been repeated for?
Well, this has been going on for months already.
And were they talking about one city, or?
We're talking Calgary.
Calgary. If this is true, what about the rest of Canada? And what happens if these young men come home? Will they be a threat? That's something parents and a nation need to confront. And if extremists come home, what can Canada do? Well, if it's inclined to charge them, it will have to prove their connection to terror groups or terrorist activities. That's hard with groups that shift identities and locations and aren't often on Canada's list of banned entities. So nothing about this is or ever will be simple. Peter?
All right, Adrienne, thank you. Now, that mother that Adrienne introduced you to has a startling story, and we'll have it later in the broadcast.